Welcome to the Intentional Man Podcast, a podcast that inspires and equips men to lead lives of intentionality and grow to their full potential. I'm your host, Jonathan McGinley, a life coach that helps men just like you create the life that you want and live a story of significance through my coaching and tools on intentionality. Thanks for joining, and welcome to the show. Welcome back to the Intentional Man Podcast. Thank you for being here and for taking the time to join the show and to invest in your personal growth. I know there are so many other great podcasts out there, so I'm just extremely grateful that you take the time to be here today, and I hope you leave today feeling inspired and encouraged. And in my last episode with Carl Sutter, we discussed the issue facing a lot of men today, and that is passivity. We talked a lot about what male passivity means, where it comes from, the effects it can have on ourselves and our loved ones. And so I definitely encourage you to listen to that episode if you haven't yet. But when I was thinking about this episode and what I wanted to discuss today, my first thought was to give some tips on how to fight passivity. I was starting to put my thoughts together, but then I had two great conversations this week with some awesome men in my life that really just kind of challenged me. And one of Carl's main tips on fighting passivity was having great men around you that you can be fully honest with and who can just really challenge you. And I've heard this a lot. I've even talked about it a lot on the show, but this week I really experienced it to its full effect. And so I just wanted to have an honest conversation with you today about how I've been wrestling with passivity recently. And I just hope that it really encourages you and it's something that you can relate with. So passivity is something that I've fallen victim to many different times in my life. It's something that has caused me to miss out on great opportunities, to not speak out for things that I believe in. It's ruined some of my relationships. It's kept other relationships from being way more meaningful. And this issue, honestly, this issue of passivity is one of the main reasons why I started this podcast. And as I go through my journey of fighting against my tendency towards passivity, I want to inspire and equip you to fight it with me. And I think passivity is robbing so many men of our God-given purpose and mission. I think it's keeping us on the sideline in areas where we need to step up. It's keeping us from pursuing big dreams. It's keeping us from being the leaders we are supposed to be. It's keeping us from being the best fathers, husbands, and friends we can be. It's keeping us from living lives that we're proud of and lives that leave a great legacy. And so with this kind of podcast, like one in this area, talking about living with intentionality, it's very easy to be tempted to act like I have all the answers or that I got this thing figured out. But the reality is, I'm in the middle of this journey just like you. And I've made enough mistakes in this area that I have found some tips and tools that help. But I'm constantly trying to grow in this area of rejecting passivity. And I think it's something that I'm honestly going to fight my entire life. I think it's something that us as men fight our entire lives. So if you feel like you're stuck or in a rut of passivity, be encouraged. You're not alone. I'm right there with you. This is something we all need to fight on a consistent basis. And I'm just thankful that we have this community of men who are not okay falling victim to passivity, but instead want to live intentional, meaningful lives. That really encourages me that you're here. So thank you for joining me on this journey. And recently, I feel like I've just been kind of slipping back into a more passive lifestyle, just being totally honest. And I was beginning to coast again in some areas. I was not pursuing my dreams with urgency and necessity. I was doing some of my routines and things, that help. But I just felt like there was something really kind of holding me back and kind of causing me to coast and get back into this kind of passive routine. And so I reached out to a mentor of mine, just a really good friend and just a wise person that can help. And we talked this past weekend, and I was kind of telling him some of these things of just what I was feeling. And again, this is the importance of these kind of relationships. And he asked me a question that just really hit deep. And he just asked, what is the main lie that you are believing about yourself right now? Wow. What a question. And I had come to him honestly for some X's and O's and for some help with business decisions. And before we could get into any of that, he just stopped me and he just said, what is the main lie that you are believing about yourself right now? And I always want to be fully transparent and honest on this show. And honestly, like the lie that I was believing was that I was a fraud. Like that was the word that came to my mind, which was kind of crazy when I sat there and thought about it. But I was believing this lie that I have to have everything together, that I have to live almost a perfect life to have credibility. I was believing that I have to have the perfect coaching program, that I have to have the perfect podcast, that I have to be a perfect role model, that I can't ever mess up, or that I always have to do things so well for people to actually respect me and listen to me. Like, wow, like talk about absolutely impossible expectations. But this is something I've struggled with throughout my life. Like I've been tempted by these thoughts a lot of different times. Like I'm constantly putting pressure on myself to live up to these impossible standards. And maybe that's something you can relate to. But I know when I start to believe that kind of lie, like I always fall victim to passivity because I don't think I could actually live up to those expectations. And because I don't believe that, like I don't do anything. Because I don't think people will listen to me unless I have it all figured out, then I don't speak out. If I don't think I can measure up to others, like if I start comparing myself to others and think I'm not good enough, that usually leads me to a passive life because I don't want to fail, or I don't want people to find out that that's how I'm feeling. And like I'm being really vulnerable and honest right now because I know this is an issue that a ton of men face. And I know when I have fallen victim to this kind of thought pattern in the past, it usually ends up in a pretty hard, painful lesson before I kind of realize what's going on. And I don't want you to have to hit rock bottom before you start recognizing these kinds of thoughts or any other lie that is forcing you to be passive. And the reality is, like, anytime I try to be perfect or act like I have it all together, it's usually when I have the least impact. Like I have the least credibility when I try to do that. No one wants to be in a relationship with someone who seems to never make any mistakes. Like we're all human. Part of being human is making mistakes. Part of being human is not having it all figured out. And so I just want to release you from any pressure you're feeling to perform, to live up to an impossible standard, or to feel like you have to have it all figured out in order to have impact. Like that is a lie. And the greatest times of impact I've had in my life are usually when I'm the most honest with myself and with others, just about how I'm doing and with where I'm at. And so that's why I felt like I just had to share this today. Like this isn't the exact episode I envisioned releasing today, but I know that true growth happens in vulnerability and honesty, and that the biggest impact comes when we admit our inadequacies and we humbly try to grow. And I think passivity is usually found on the other side of a lie that we are believing about ourselves. It's usually found on the other side of a limiting belief. Like, let me say that again. Passivity is usually found on the other side of a lie that we are believing about ourselves. If you recognize an area in your life where you're feeling passive on a consistent basis, there's probably something deeper that's going on. So I want to ask you the same question today that I was asked. What is the biggest lie that you are believing about yourself right now? Pause the episode right now and ask yourself that question. Like, I almost guarantee that lie that you're believing is forcing you to live a more passive lifestyle. And it could be that you believe that you're not talented enough, or you're not smart enough, or you aren't charismatic or confident enough, that you don't have what it takes, that you aren't as good as others around you. Like, all of those things are lies. And if you allow yourself to believe them, you're going to find yourself stuck in a rut of passivity. And I could be here and I could try to give tips on how to fight passivity, and that would be great. But I don't think that would matter unless you start to identify those lies that you have actually believed. Like, take the time, put in the effort to actually think this through. Once you've identified that lie, then identify what the truth really is. Identify the flip side of that lie, and then write down that truth. Write it down and review it frequently. Let the truth propel you to a life of intentionality. You are talented enough. You do have what it takes. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be the best to have impact. You don't have to be the best business person to start that business of your dreams. Like, you don't have to be the fittest guy at the gym to start losing weight. You don't have to eat perfectly every single time in order to start a meal plan, in order to start a diet, or to take steps towards becoming healthier. You don't have to be perfect. It's time, like, dismiss the lies that are holding you back and just start taking steps. Like, none of us are perfect. I'm not perfect, and you don't have to be. And you have what it takes to throw away the lies and to pursue your full potential. I believe in you. I believe in what you're capable of. And there's an amazing life waiting for you on the other side of that lie. There's an amazing life waiting for you on the other side of passivity. There's a life full of great joy and great relationships. So don't wait any longer. Take the step now. Ask yourself, what is the biggest lie that I have been believing about myself? Ask it, identify it, dismiss the lie, write down the truth, and then review it often. Join me on this constant journey of fighting passivity and living an intentional life. We're not always going to be perfect, but it's going to be worth it. And so I'll leave you with this too. Find some guys to help you on this journey. I wouldn't have had this breakthrough moment if I didn't have a great friend ask me a really hard question. And a question, honestly, that I didn't want to hear and that I didn't want to answer. And I wanted to make excuses. But when it really came down to it, I had to be honest with myself. And that was just the truth of what I had been believing about myself. But being able to identify that and then reverse it and believe the opposite has been incredibly helpful for me in this past week. So I hope it is for you too. These kind of relationships where people can ask you those questions, they're absolutely invaluable. So please go there with your current relationships or start to look for a mentor or somebody in your life who can kind of ask you these hard questions. So with that, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this episode was an encouragement to you. Please reach out if there's any way that I can help. I'm here for your success. Now go and live a life that you're proud of by living intentionally. And we'll see you next time. Thank you for tuning in to the Intentional Man podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to support the show, please share it with others, post about it on social media, and leave a rating and review. If you are someone who is looking to take your life to the next level, accelerate your success, and live more intentionally, I would love to help. Shoot me a text at 970-430-6085, and we could schedule a time to meet to discuss your vision and your goals. Again, that is 970-430-6085. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, build a life that matters by living intentionally.